All right, guys, we need to dive in and get rolling and grooving. So tonight's is called Turn Off the Noise. That's what I labeled tonight. So the reason I'm talking about this is I really want us to seek the Lord. In order to seek the Lord, sometimes you have to turn the noise down and turn off the noise. You have to let the noise kind of go to the wayside, and that you have to be very intentional these days. So one thing I want to start with is a few stats. And this really is just stats on the noise that your generation, this is specific to your generation, your age group, is facing. So I think it was somewhere, I read a stat, it was like in 1980-something, the money that was being spent on advertising for you guys, they call you guys the tweens or tweeners. That's what they call you, okay? Out there, that's what they call you. So in marketing meetings and stuff, you're called the tweeners or tweens. The money they spent on advertising way back in like 1980-something was like itty-bitty. But now, this is how much they're spending, $1 billion on your generation to advertise to you and sell you and get you addicted to specific things. That's what you're facing. 8 through 12-year-olds average 4 hours a day of entertainment media. Not school, not on a device at school, in entertainment media. For 13 through 18-year-olds, which you're just asking about, they average 6 hours a day. 6 hours a day on devices with entertainment media. And entertainment can be social media. In fact, for girls, that's the number one thing is social media. For boys, it's gaming by a high number. Girls, it's like 14%. Boys, it's like 84% or something. Social media, though, for girls it's kind of the opposite. It flips because girls like talking and jabbering about different things, I guess. So here's your first blank on your paper right here. The spirit of this age is seeking to consume massive parts of your life. The spirit of this age is overwhelmingly focused on consuming, not adults, not so much. I mean, adults, yes, they want to keep you reeled in. But your age, they are focusing so hardcore on because if they get you hooked at your age, they know they've got you, most of you, for the rest of your life. So they are giving an enormous amount of energy, time in their business meetings and in their marketing meetings and in their whatever meetings to consume you with distraction. And it's succeeding. The statistics are saying it's succeeding massively. Nike sums it up with this slogan, just do it. They sum it up. That's kind of what they're trying to get you to, the mantra you walk with, just do it. Just give myself whatever I want. Oh, yeah. This is the thing that happens is you get blinded to the real realities and the depravities of this age. And I'm going to touch on this more right now. So we live in a developed nation, right, where we have freedoms. We have abundance. Most of us would be considered rich. Probably all of us would be considered rich if we were placed in another nation. And so we have all these things, and so we're consumed, and they're trying to take your whole generation, turn up the noise, cancel out the important stuff, and consume you with instant and constant pleasures at your fingertips. That is their number one mission right now. They're turning the noise up as loud as they can, and the noise has gotten louder and louder, and they've been doing it little. It's kind of like that frog that goes in the boiling pot. They put them in the pot, the water's cold, you turn the tick, and the fire comes on, and you just let the pot slowly heat up, and then that frog just sits there, and he slowly boils to death over time. That's what's happening to your generation. It is very sad that they've put you in the pot, and they've slowly turned it up over the years, and you're at a boiling point. They're slowly killing you, especially your insides. Sometimes you don't even need things at your fingertips. You can just say, hey, or Google, or Alexa, right? So you can just say it, and they'll just do whatever it is you're wanting them to do. So we don't even need it at our fingertips. Again, they've ratcheted up another knot. The last thing greedy advertisers and many throughout the developed world, that we're the developed world. We're a world that doesn't have to, we're not constantly starving to death or fighting for everything that we possibly need. We have pretty much anything we want. The last thing that greedy advertisers and many throughout the developed world want you to do is to turn down the noise. Quiet yourself regularly and think for yourself. They want you to slowly turn into zombies that eventually feel trapped in their minds, emotions, and their time, ultimately leading to depression, hatred, self-pity, and a whole host of other things that will cause you to make consistently bad decisions. So the generation right above you, right? This is like Blake's generation. Like these guys right above you, right? This is where they're at. This is where they're at, Eric's generation. They're in this place right now where many of them are trapped, right, Blake? Would you say yes to that? Correct. The rate of suicide is way up. All kinds of things are going out the window, like going through the roof. And just think, that's for Blake's generation. But for your generation, it's exponentially went up. Like it's only been 10 years we've had smartphones, or smart devices. So it's like, it's going to be probably 10 times for your generation. So tonight I want to talk about the battlefield, where the battlefield is at. I just kind of alluded to it. The world's wanting you to fall in love with putting yourself first and everyone else second. They're trumpeting it. Just do it. So the battlefield, number one, this is the first one, is in your mind. I'm going to talk about the battlefield of your mind. When we become consumed with what gives me pleasure and makes me feel good, then our minds are centered on who? Myself, right? I'm centered on me. And we look to do what when we're centered on ourselves? Pleasing ourselves, giving pleasure to ourselves. That's what we get consumed with, right? Our own pleasures. So this is kind of the thing, is you think it's like, well, does Thanksgiving increase because we're getting stuff? So surely Thanksgiving, we'd be thankful and we give thanks. Actually, it's quite the opposite. We never give thanks. We become more consumed with what we want. It doesn't do that. It gives us endless amounts of pleasure, so we're looking for the next pleasure instead of stopping and giving thanks. It's kind of on to the next pleasure, or complain about the next pleasure I'm not receiving. That's what happens. Most of the time, it barrels us deeper into self-centeredness and leaves us completely empty, in many cases isolated. For your generation, you guys sitting in the seats right now, some of you feel empty. Some of you, it's because you are self-centered, because that's what all of these people are trying to get you to do, is focus on yourself. If you're engaging with their agenda, that's where it'll end you up. But guess where it ends them up? In rich mansions. They get really rich. They get a lot of money. You pay. That was another statistic. As I was looking through a bunch of statistics, they said that your age group, you guys are young, your age group, within America this last year, $40 billion came of just consumable income from you guys. I'm sure your parents put it in your hands, but I'm talking about your generation. $40 billion on all kinds of entertainment, all kinds of media, all kinds of gaming, all kinds of whatever. So you're eating it up. And so I just want to touch on it because it's so important to say, hey, here's a problem, and then here's what we're going to do about it. In the day and age we live in, we must be very intentional to stop and look to the Lord. In the olden days, you might stumble. This was kind of ironic to me as I was typing this out. I thought, man, it's so true. Whenever I was a kid, you would sometimes stumble upon the Lord. Even if I wasn't trying to get God, I would be like, kind of walking through life, and I would stumble onto him. Because I had like my 2 hours after school that I could maybe play my Nintendo, or the television. You couldn't watch whatever you want. When did you watch? You had to wait for your show to come on at a specific time and then click it on and be like, oh, here's my show. Now we can just consume it whenever we want, the exact show we want, when we want. But back then, I had to go and fill my time with other things, and I would sometimes, even though I could be busy and have noise, I would just stumble upon the Lord in that. The Lord would kind of knock on me and be like, hey, Rich, in a somewhat quiet moment. But for your generation, this is literally an impossible task many times. I'm not saying I'm giving generalities over your generation, but I'm saying that this is what's happening in developed nations like ours that we live in, where you're consumed, you're fidgety, you can't focus, you're just, because your mind is just consumed, and the Lord can't get to you, right? You have to stop and look to him to actually get, you're not going to stumble upon him. In some divine cases, yes, where you stumble upon him, but it's becoming less and less from my experience. Micah 7:7, but as for me, I will look to the Lord. I will wait for the God of my salvation. My God will hear me. I will stop. I will wait for him. My God will hear me as I come to him. We have, again, I don't even have it today in these notes, but James chapter 4, draw near to God, and God will then draw near to you. Right? You take the initiative. I'm drawing near, and then he comes back to me. But the Lord he desires for us to have some movement in our hearts. The second thing, so we have the mind. The battlefield of the mind, the battlefield of our emotions. Let's talk about this. Next blank. If you give your mind to something, then your emotions almost always follow. For some people, they do always follow. When you give your mind to something, your emotions almost always follow. I'll give an example. We're in an election year, right? And so if you give your mind to focusing on politics, guess what? It gives you this rage. So some of you might have parents that are Democrats. Some of you might have parents that are Republicans. And maybe you've seen their emotions follow their mind. But you see that they have understanding. They have their mind. They're learning things. And then this emotion follows. That can be unhealthy. Many times it is. Another thing is sports teams. We all like to root for the Vikings, right? There might be a few that don't. Go Vikings! And so with a sports team, your mind's in it, right? You're learning about the players. You're learning what's going on. You're learning about the other teams. And you're like, my team's the team. And then slowly but surely you're like, yes, the Vikings. And then when they lose, you go, oh. Like this past week, you go, oh. And you struggle because they lost. Why? It's an emotion, right? You're feeling an emotion because you've got it in your mind that they should win or that you love them or whatever, and you've learned these things, and so then your heart kind of follows, or your emotions. The same is true with the Lord. The more time we spend with the Lord gaining understanding about Him according to His Word, and seeing about who He is and what He has done, the more engaged we become with the Lord. In the toughest of moments when something tragic happens, the question is, those things that we've given our emotions to, video games or given our emotions to teams, are those things going to come and save us in those toughest moments? We're going to turn to something else, whatever that thing is. Maybe our parents, maybe others. But my heart is for you guys to know the Lord and to turn to the Lord. Psalms 126, 5-6. Those who shed tears as they plant will shout for joy when they reap the harvest. The one who weeps as he walks along carrying his bag of seed will certainly come in with a shout of joy carrying his sheaves of grain. Basically, the one who spreads the seed will eventually harvest the grain that grew up out of that seed. So we could use this in lots of different ways, and there's context here. But, if we're bought into God's mission and we're spreading the seed of the gospel and we're invested in His heart, then we're going to come in with joy when others come in to knowing Him and being with Him and spending time with Him. But if it's just kind of a joke and we just go to church because our parents tell us, then we're probably not going to be, our joy is going to be found somewhere else. Our pleasures are going to be found somewhere else. It's not going to be in the Lord and His heart and His ways. So I want you guys, I'm saying this because I desire and want you guys for your hearts and your emotions and your time and your minds to be given to the Lord. The last thing is time. The battlefield of your time. So I've already mentioned about the 6 hours, 4 hours, all that stuff. Surely God is worth 1% of our time. So I'm really making a call to you guys before I enter into the encounter guide here in a brief second. I'm making a call to you guys related to your time. Because your mind, what goes in your mind is given to you, your emotions follow it, and then guess what? Your time follows that. So we need to start here with the mind. We need to dive in. We might be like, the Word of God's boring, or I'm just, when I worship, I just don't get into it. I'm just not that guy, and we have endless excuses. But it's just because we aren't willing to do the hard things. We like everything easy because we're a generation of easy. We're a generation of, I'll just give myself what pleases me in the moment right now. It's hard to lean in and worship, or it's hard to read the Word to begin with. But we have to do it. Get in our minds, let our hearts follow, and then our time we'll give more and more of our time to it. And I just want to say this. It doesn't mean that it's like I need to be in the praying position for 24 minutes. Or I need to be reading the Bible and my eyes, I can't blink for 24 minutes. It can be things, there's many ways that I've sought the Lord, where I go for walks. And in fact, most of the time when I'm praying, I'm walking almost all the time. I walk a lot when I pray. It just keeps me active, my mind going, because usually I'm up early in the morning. Or the Word, I have a specific focus in the Word, and it's not just like, there it is. I'm not just like flipping it and sticking it wherever, but I have a focus. I'm going to study the kingdom, or I'm going to study perseverance, or I'm going to study Hebrews, or I'm going to study James, or whatever it is. There's a focus that comes. Like relationships take time. Relationships take time. So here's the question. If we don't give time to our relationship with God, do we have a relationship with God? No, we don't. I'll ask it again just in case somebody missed it. If we don't give time to God, do we have a relationship with God? We don't. But there's many, including myself growing up, where I liked to come to church, and I was like the poster boy for First Baptist Church of Aztec. But guess what? I didn't spend any time with God. I only did what they told me to do at the church. So that's why I spend enormous amounts of time constantly trumpeting to you guys to pursue God, seek God, lean into God, go after God. I even take time to put together and design an encounter guide because I believe in it that much, because I believe that if you and your generation do not go after God and do not seek God, and everything is against you in seeking Him, everything, even the church sometimes is against you seeking God. They find ways to distract you. There's whole youth groups that do all kinds of party action, and that's the only way they can reach you. They think that that's the only way. Not me. I'm calling you guys to a higher place. So that's why I take enormous amounts of time to create things like this. So you can take it home and you can look through it and you can journal and write down the scriptures and get fired up about God and actually grow a heart for God. Our hearts die if we don't spend time with God. God is life. He says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. Seek after me. And if you don't seek after Him, then it's just 2 and 2 equals 4. You will be a dead individual walking around, but not in a good way. We'll be constantly giving ourselves pleasure, but there is a day where those pleasures end, and that's what God says. I'm coming on a day, and all that pleasure, if you're that person, it's not going to go well for you. We give time to what's important. I'm challenging you. If God doesn't currently get your time and your energy, then let's make Him important over these next months and begin to. That's my challenge to you. So if God isn't important enough to give time to Him right now, then let's change it. Let's begin pursuing Him. Most things worth living for take hard work and perseverance. This is no different. We expect God just to show up and slap us in the face. That's not how it works. And this is the last thing I'm going to share. Perseverance is the hard work you do after you get tired of doing the hard work you already did. Let's say that again. It's a tongue twister. Perseverance is the hard work you do after you get tired of doing the hard work you already did. This is great for a sports team, if you're on a sports team, whatever. But I'm telling you, I'm going to say what I've said to you many times. You guys have heard me say this many times. If you fell in anything else, your sports team, if you fell in whatever else in this life, do not fail in the place of God. I'm begging you guys. Lord, I just pray right now, Lord, that you would do a work in these few that are in this room right now. God, that in this room you would raise up those, God, who would bring about revival in areas of their lives. They would go to their schools. That you would begin to do a work in the small secret places of their hearts, in the small secret places of their bedrooms or wherever they're at, God. That they would begin to raise up and be those that pray, God, under their breath in moments when it's necessary. They'd be able to be leaders in areas where it's needed and no one else is willing to lead or lay down their life. They would be the ones. God, raise them up now at 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. God, raise them up to be righteous warriors for you, God, those that pursue you with all their hearts. Raise up Davids. Raise up Annas. Lord, Davids that have a heart after the living God. A man after God's own heart. Annas that spent 80 years in the temple praying and seeking your face. God, raise up those type of men and women, boys and girls right here, Lord. Raise them up to go forth and take over certain places, God, to be able to speak truth, the gospel, and bring others into the age to come with them, into your glory. In Jesus' name, amen.